How's it going, guys? Randall aka Shizukatsu here with a quick note before we start the video. Since we did our early opening for RWBY Premium Booster, courtesy of Bushiroad, we will not be doing a regular opening video for this set, as you guys have probably already noticed. If you haven't already checked out our early opening video, you can check it out by clicking the info card in the top right corner. Also, the expected case ratios for RWBY Premium are 3 SPs per case, and here are some of the beautiful SPs that you can expect to pull in the set. Unfortunately, we were not able to pull the John SP, so we don't have that one here, but we have all the rest. Let us know down in the comments if you were able to pull any of these in your boxes, and without further ado, let's get right into the video.
How's it going, guys? Mike here on the Tressa's Collectibles channel. RWBY Premium is finally upon us, the much-awaited continuation to the RWBY franchise in Weiss Schwarz, covering Volume 4 of the series, and with it comes a lot of cool new cards, couple new Climax combos, a lot of much needed level 0 utility, some additional top end, existing support for Climax combos, or new support for existing Climax combos. So I figured I wanted to show off one of these potential new builds that we can try out. And for longtime viewers of the channel, you might remember that when RWBY Volume 1 came out, Rando and I did our each of us did our own deck building sessions where we kind of just went in raw and built a deck based off of a concept. Like, for example, like I built 8 standby and Randall built 8 door. So I wanted to try that out again with that same RWBY set with the same archetype. So today's video, I'm going to be going hands-on with you guys, trying to build an updated RWBY Premium version of 8 Standby RWBY. Guide you guys through my thought process on how I get started, how I select my cards, so on and so forth. So follow along and let's get right into it. So with any deck build, we want to first identify what Climax combos we want to run. So RWBY has 3 standby combos now. They have the original 2, which is the level 3 RWBY finisher and the level 3 Pura shuffle back. For this build, I think though, I want to incorporate the new Climax combo as well, which is the level 3 or the level 2 Pro, I believe. Which is kind of like a carbon copy of the quintessential quintuplets Nino 2-2. He has a really cool effect where during your turn, if all of your characters are remnants, he gets 5k and hand encore, putting him at 12k during your turn. Climax combo with his own standby, we can sack the standby at the beginning of our attack phase to stand him, and then he gets 1000 power cross turn, so he goes to 13. RWBY Premium Booster has a couple of nice standby cards, so I do want to build around those this time around. Now the problem is we have to identify what Climax combos we want to run. We're definitely still running the RWBY because that's going to be our finisher. And the level 2 Crow gives us a much appreciated kind of like a tempo swing. Instead of the traditional standby game where you reach level 1, you stand by level 2 in the back row, you kind of have to wait a turn for that to really start taking effect. With Crow's Climax combo, we get to just immediately put him in the front row and start swinging with him, contesting board. So I think I'm going to try 4-4 line first. Maybe consider like a cheeky little package here with the Pura, but I think I'm going to hold off on this package for now. Build the rest of my deck first, try to just have everything as consistent as possible, and then at the end of the session, we're going to see if we can fit in Pura. So I'm going to leave this card on the side so I don't forget. So naturally, we're going to play for RWBY and 4 of her Climax. RWBY specifically also does need the level 0 Pura in 2 copies of her in memory for her to activate her Climax combo, so we're going to put in 4 copies of those. I'm going to try to separate the levels here. And then the card that immediately also comes to mind when we're running the Ruby combo is, of course, the new level 3 Ruby, which combos with the same Climax combo, Ruby's Awakening, specifically meant to support the old Ruby level 3. She allows us to stand a character at the beginning of our attack phase, so we can activate Ruby's Climax combo by arresting her to clock shoot the opposing character and burn 3, and then we can immediately stand the Ruby to attack with her again. Having 2 of the old Ruby, 1 of the new Ruby as our setup, going into Climax phase, play the Climax, rest, clock shoot burn, rest, clock shoot burn, and then we'll activate standby's effect, standing this Ruby, and then this Ruby can stand this Ruby can stand this Ruby, and then we still get 3 attacks. So that's going to be pretty cool for us. We're going to use that as our primary endgame finishing component. So I think we're going to start with 4-4. I'll start with 4-3. I'll just put 4 in here. We'll see how that goes. We can always cut down later if we don't have enough space. But for now, since we are thinking of having 2 of the old Ruby on the board and 1 of the new Ruby on the board while having 1 in the waiting room, I'm just going to run 4 for consistency for the time being. Next, we obviously do want to put in the other Climaxes, which is the coolest landing strategy, goes with our level 2 Crow. And as far as the number of these Crows we're going to run, since they don't really scale like traditional Climax combos, like we can just play, for example, when we reach level 1, we can play 3 of our level 1 Climax combos, activate Climax combo, and they all get Climax combo plusing effect. The Crow can really only activate once per turn. So I think I'm just going to go with 3 copies. 4 is probably a bit overkill. There's going to be significant diminishing returns after the first copy. But I still want 3 just to be able to see it, and having 1 in front row and then triggering standby for a second in the back row is also pretty decent. Okay, so we have our Climax combo pieces out now. Now we have to think about what we're exactly standbying at every phase in the game. Now, at level 1, we're naturally going to try to get out our Crows. And at level 2, it's very beneficial for us to standby out the Ruby level 3s. Every Ruby that we standby out is 2 stocks saved at level 3 proper, that we don't have to spend on those, and we can spend on something else like Stock Swap or the level 3 Neapolitan. And so it really comes down to level 1. Level 1, we have a couple options. We still have the 1175 Hand Encore Ruby from set 1, which we can run if we just want like a pretty generic 7-5 beater. But there is a new 1-1 from the premium set that I have my mind on that is a bit more annoying. It's this level 1 Tyrion, whose effect is during my turn, he's a 6-5. But more importantly, if the character facing him is cost 0 or lower, he cannot become reversed. So against most traditional 1k1 decks, they don't run any costed characters before level 2, if any. So this Tyrion has the potential to live quite a few turns. In fact, for people that are familiar with kind of the old meta Nino quintessential quintuplet standby deck, these 2 effects are actually the go-to character profiles for the old standby deck, having the level 1 unreversible profile into the level 2 automatic stand become gigantic on our turn profile. So I think this is going to be a very solid level 0, level 1 game plan. Much more solid than the level 1 Ruby 7-5 Hand Encore. Nowadays, a lot of the prominent decks in the game can very easily get to 7-5 or higher on their attack. And even though we can just Hand Encore the 1-1s, it's not going to be as efficient as if compared to if we just don't need to Hand Encore at all, because Tyrion doesn't get reversed. Alright, following that, I want to start looking at our level 0 profiles. Generally speaking, nowadays I do like to run a fairly high number of level 0s. Comfortable range for me is anywhere from 18 to 22, but that's just a very general average. But we're just going to start throwing in cards that come to mind as the best profiles to run in relation to a standby build. And first of all, it is going to be this James Ironwood card. Now, James Ironwood is one of the premier hand filter cards in RWBY. There is a new hand filter in Premium set, which is the level 0 Raven. This card's pretty decent. This is on play, top check. If it's a remnant, add to hand and discard one. And then also on play, I can discard a remnant to draw a card. So James actually has the same one of his effects is the same as Raven's, the discard a remnant, draw a card on play. But James's second effect is discard anything to top check and salvage level X or lower, which I personally find to be more useful compared to Raven's secondary effect. If you do need to, well, I guess it does kind of, it can go both ways. Raven does have the ability to draw 2 cards if you were specifically trying to dig for a standby, whereas James Ironwood just allows you so much more access to your waiting room because he can just salvage a level X or lower with his on-play effect, and he still has the ability to draw 1 card if you need. I'm just going to start with James. Maybe after testing this deck and I find that the Raven may be a bit better, maybe I'll consider running Raven instead. But these two are fairly similar in terms of the role that they play in our standby deck, which is the ability to send our standby targets to the waiting room. Like if we draw the 2/2s and the 1/1s, we want to be able to have a chance to always discard them so that we can standby them out. So I'm going to put 4 James Ironwood. And then we have to think about how we're plussing afterwards. Now, there's a couple options for plussing in RWBY. RWBY is definitely not lacking for premium plussing options at level 0. First of all, we still have our good old reliable Sung Wukong. 4K on play, on reverse, pay 1, clock ourselves, top check 2, add 2. We also do have the Lai Ren from set 1, which is on death, pay 1, top check 3, send 1 to clock, and then salvage anything from waiting room. Or one of the better, or one of the best new level 0s from the premium set, which is the level 0 Nora, which is just a traditional Ricky profile. On play, pay 1, clock ourselves from top deck to search our deck for any level 1 or lower character, reveal to opponent, and put in our hand. And also has the other effect of on play, we can discard a remnant to draw 1 card. Again, adding to that extra consistency of maybe we can on play, pay 1, clock ourselves, search our deck for a Tyrion, and then immediately discard Tyrion to draw a card, to then play standby to standby out the Tyrion that we just searched for and discarded. Honestly, a wealth of options. I'm going to probably end up with one of these, or maybe even both. I'm not quite sure. But I really do like the prospect of having an extra hand filter with the Nora on top of being able to selectively search. But at the same time, Wukong is just so good at contesting board, and getting that raw plus is really nice. In this deck, it's not super useful to get exact advantage in our hand, but setting up board is more important, and the number of cards in our hand is just kind of like, okay, if we have cards, we have cards. So maybe the 4K of the Sung Wukong is probably a bit more attractive. Okay, I kind of talked myself into running more of the Wukong then. So we're gonna run 4 Sun. And I still like the Nora. So I'm gonna start with like 3 Nora. And we're just gonna add those for now, and then we can always slim down or change them entirely as we progress in our deck building. But that's just what we're gonna go for the time being. Let's see. And then I think next we're going to look at Climax swap. Obviously very important to have in almost any Weiss deck. The Climax swap in RWBY is from set 1. She is an uncommon, if I recall correctly. And yeah, this one. So we're just going to play one. If we play James Ironwood, it's going to be very easy for us to grab any level 0 from a waiting room, just because of his salvage effect. So 1 should be enough when we need her. Alright, I think that's a pretty good start to our level 0. We might want to run a couple more utility options here and there just to round it out. But after that, I think we want to try to identify how our mid-game is going to shape up. Because I think we have our early game strategy pretty unlocked now. We have our plussing options, we have our search options. We have a lot of ways to discard our cards in hand, to throw them into the waiting room so that we can standby them out. We have Nora and James Ironwood who can both discard characters. So what do we do once we reach level 1 and we stand by our Crow? It's probably just going to be attacking with like a couple Tyrians and a Crow. Yeah, I guess that's just going to be our level 1 game plan. I guess we can consider maybe something like a bounce back. If I recall, this set also did give us a bounce back effect. When we play Climax, we can return this card. Yeah. So this level 0 Crow is when we play Climax, we can bounce him back to our hand. If we do, choose one of our characters, they get +1 soul. Kind of offsets the downside of standby, which is that we don't directly impact our board's soul count like regular 1k1 Climaxes do. He also has the unplay effect of being able to look at the top card and put it on top or waiting room, so that's pretty decent there. We'll just put 1 for now. Maybe we increase the count to 2 later, but 1 is good enough for me. Oh, and of course Brainstorms. Let's see. So the new Brainstorm on the block for RWBY Premium is this John Brainstorm, who is a top check 3 Brainstorm. Per every Climax we hit off of his tap self Brainstorm, we get to look at up to the top 3 cards of our deck and choose up to 1 card among them, put the rest to our hand. Like I mentioned earlier, our exact hand quality doesn't have to be very sculpted, but what is important is that we do find Climaxes quite often, as standby decks in general do want to try to just bring out a lot of big boards as soon as possible. John also has the secondary effect of when we play a Climax, we can choose one of our characters and they get on attack. We can look at up to the top 2 cards of our deck, stack 1 on top, mill the rest, commonly called a Crush effect, which in standby is actually really, really good. If we want to make sure that our first trigger, for example, is clean, we can put that effect on the character we're going to attack with first, and we have 2 chances to make sure it's clean. Alternatively, if we really want to try to trigger a standby that turn, we can put it on a character attacking second or third and make sure that we have 1 extra chance, 1 extra card to look at to try to trigger a standby. So this is a profile I'm very fond of in standby decks. So I'm going to put 2 here. At the same time, I think I want to add a couple of level 3 utilities that are like ones-ofs that I don't think I have the option to access super easily. So it's not as if I want to neglect Salvage Brainstorm either. The Nora Valkyrie from set 1 is just a generic tap self Salvage Brainstorm. So we're going to put these as our options for now. Maybe we run just 1, but I'm thinking we run a split of both. And we're going to see where we need to slim down in terms of the overall card count later. But these are definitely cards in consideration. Okay, next we're going to run the aforementioned one-offs that we probably want to get depending on the situation at hand when we reach level 3. First of all, definitely the level 3 Salem is the Clock Swapper from set 1. On play pay 1, we can shove not Clock Swapper, sorry, Stock Swapper. On play we can pay 1 to Stock Swap our opponent. But alternatively, we can also pay that same 1 cost to mill the bottom 5 cards of our opponent's deck and burn X equals to the number of Climaxes milled. So if they put themselves in a situation where they aren't really stock swappable because they only have like 2 or 3 stock, but you know they're still really compressed in a thin deck, you can use that mill 5 option instead and hopefully mill, a good amount of Climaxes and really put that aggression on. The second card at level 3 that I want to put up as a one-of is definitely the level 3 Neo. We've talked a lot about synergy with this level 3 RWBY in particular when set 1 first came out. But Neo's ability to bring 2 characters onto our opponent's stage from their waiting room is really useful, as that basically translates to 2 guaranteed clock shoots for if we have 2 rubies activating the Climax combos. It prevents the ability for our opponent to play around our RWBY finisher in terms of just triple crashing their board every turn. Now, obviously, we do have to, spend 2 stock on this, but it's still there. Neapolitan also has an extremely useful second effect of on play, we can pay 1 and just salvage a Climax. So she basically just does everything that we want to do in terms of, accounting for our opponents playing around on Ruby, and also accounting for if we don't have Ruby's Awakening in our hand in the first place. This card can literally just solve all of our problems. So we're definitely going to put 1 here. Maybe down the line, honestly, depending on how important it is, we might even bump that up to 2. But I think 1 to start is fine. And then let's do counters. Let's see what counter options we have available. Now, as far as I remember, most of the notable counter options are still from the first set of Ruby. There is the kind of salvage self counter from RWBY Premium. Sun's effect is when we use the backup, we can pay 1, salvage a copy of himself. So essentially, we just need to hold that 1 card in hand, and it can protect our lanes. But I don't think protecting our lanes is like super important in this deck anyways. So I think if we want to run counters, we want them more for the utility effects. So I'm going to go with the good old tried and trusted Crow Brand win counter from set 1, which is when we play the backup, we can pay 2 and refresh our deck. That way, if we trigger poorly and we just have a bunch of deck left, we can use the Crow as an emergency refresh button and get ourselves out of pockets of free damage. Alright, let's take a look at our card count, because obviously I'm building this in real time. I don't have a deck log to tell me what the card count is, so we're going to count manually. So that's 4, 8, 12, 16, 21 zeros, 25, 29, 30, 37, 39. Okay, so 3 more cards, and we're actually already done with our 50 card pile so far. I think I do want some extra level 1s here. A level 1 that comes to mind that is going to be pretty useful, especially if we can't always activate our Pyrrha's on reverse effect, is the level 1 Ruby Bomb from set 1. Or, sorry, Pyrrha Bomb. So, one of the other ways that our opponent can counteract us from activating the Ruby level 3, Ruby actually does need 2 copies of the Pyrrha in memory, and Pyrrha goes to memory naturally by getting reversed in battle. But if, for example, right now the meta is full of things like Chainsaw Man and 7 Deadly Sins and Avatar The Last Airbender, all of those decks have access to hard removal, so that our Pyrrha would not be able to send herself to memory. So in those cases, if we have the uniform Pyrrha, she does have an on-death effect of being able to send Pyrrha from the Widow straight to our memory instead. So this is just going to be extra insurance for our memory condition. But she also is just a level 1 reverser. And also, on play, if we have 2 or more other Revenant characters, we can draw 1 discard 1. So that just gives us an extra hand filter. And of course, you can never have too much hand filter, especially when it's attached to a card with effects that you already want to run. It also acts as a couple more extra level 1s that we can standby out. If you only have zeros, triggering a standby at level 0 is not going to feel the best. But I can mulligan the uniform Pyrrha, and if I trigger a standby, it's not going to feel too bad. She's always going to be able to trade 1 for 1 since she's a reverser. So, there's that a little bit of extra there. Do we want any level 3 supports? There is the level 3 Weiss from set 1, who is a 2-kit front, on-play heal, and startup, rest herself, top check 2, and rearrange them. But the way I'm kind of thinking about how this deck is going to operate, I feel like there's not going to be too many too many situations in which I want to standby out anything that's not one of the rubies. Because I don't really feel like power is going to be that much of a big issue with Ruby. She's just going to go and clock shoot everything naturally anyways. So given the opportunity, I don't see myself in a position where I want back row power assists which is kind of a rarity in standby decks, but I think just based on my gut instinct, that's just kind of the way RWBY decks are going to go with this top end. You just don't really care about the power level on the board at all. Now, what we do care about is if our opponent's board is untargetable. Things like that time I got reincarnated as a slime with their 2/1 Shuna and Muran package makes their entire board outside of the 2/1 Shuna hexproof. RWBY does need to target our opponent to be able to clock shoot them. So we need a way to counteract that. One card that I can think of in RWBY that can do that is this level 3 James. James half the sideboard, on play, top check 3, rearrange them in any order, and bounce one of our opponent's characters. So we play this to bounce our opponent's 2/1 Shuna, making their entire board targetable, and then our RWBY Roses are free to do whatever we want. Now, obviously these are all level 3s and they cost a bunch of stock, but that kind of reinforces my idea that like at level 2, when we actually trigger standbys, we really want to be bringing out as many of like these rubies as possible because they are part of our endgame package. And every ruby that we bring out with standby is just 2 extra stocks saved that we can then use on level 3 situational cards like the James, like the Neil, and like the Salem stock swap, right? So that's going to be, I think, the bulk of my level 3s. I'm going to try to reflect on if we need any more. But in the meantime, this kind of just seems like a deck. The level 2 might be a bit sparse, but I'm not sure if we need any more level 2s outside of just throwing a bunch of crows at our opponent. Let's think. Let's just take a look at the premium set, see if we're missing anything, see if any inspiration comes up. But I do like the direction that this deck is already in. I think we have a pretty solid strategy. I guess we could play some early play healers. That definitely is in consideration as well. And then we also have to try to account for color. Right now we are on just 2 colors, mostly red as you can see, but we do have a couple of blue cards. I think that's one of the other primary reasons we want to run the James Ironwood hand filter over the Raven hand filter is because that card is blue. And as long as we get 1 copy into our level zone by level 3, then we will be able to access our Neo and James level 3s. Now, these 2 cards also as well are cards that I really want to see if I can fit. First of all, the Tyrion level 3 is just a very no strings attached early play healer. He has the 4 or more early play condition, which is widely regarded to be one of the easiest early play conditions for level 3s. On play, discard a card, heal to stock. And also during our turn, he's 11k, and on reverse, we can send our reverse character to the memory. So this is a good way to remove pesky characters, things that have Hand Encore, for example, or deny on death effects and stuff. Whereas the Cinder is on play, we can discard a card to return all cards in all waiting rooms to their decks. And also cancel burn 1 the turn she's played. This card I probably won't fit in standby very well the more I think about it, because the act of returning all cards to all of our opponent's decks, or to all cards for both players' decks, means that I won't have a waiting room anymore to standby out the rubies. And that probably is not going to be super good. So while it is kind of like a decompression tool, I think there's not going to be a lot of chances or opportunities in which this is going to be so beneficial, so much so that I am willing to sacrifice deck slots for it. That's really the way I think about the value of cards that I put in my deck a lot of the time, is how situational they are, their effectiveness when they actually do come up, and the opportunity cost of putting them in my deck compared to being able to run something else, which can potentially be either more useful more often, or if they're also another tech card, be a lot more impactful. So these are cards that I think will be a lot more impactful as one-ofs, just to kind of give a comparison. Whereas the Cinder, I just don't really think there's going to be that many games. Just like maybe example, like maybe 1 in 20 games where this is useful. Whereas these ones, just the idea of these existing is going to make our opponent play differently. So that's kind of my thought process on like tech cards in general. Kind of just a small tangent there. I do want maybe like, I'm really not sure about this Tyrion. I'm not sure if I want to fit it in. But at the same time, the way I'm looking at this deck right now, it doesn't really have ways to pay a stock at level 2. Or like ever. Outside of brainstorming. So I feel like you can't really go wrong with adding like 2 copies of Tyrion. So I'm going to do that. It'll also allow me to kind of play the very common approach at level 2 against hyper-aggressive level 3 combo decks, which is you want to decompress yourself in terms of susceptibility to stock swap. And you also want to try to heal as much as possible at level 2 so that you can try to get out of range of their extremely offensive level 3 finishers like the level 3 Gura, the level 3 Azula, things like that. And being able to have a consistent way to spend your stock while healing is the best way to do that. So I think Tyrion can fit that strategy quite well if we do need to go on more of a defensive game plan there. Alright, how many cards is this? I think we're a bit over. I think we're at like 51 or 52, so let's double check again. 16, 20, we still have 21 zeros. 6 level 1, so 27, 30, 31, 35, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. Okay, so we have 52 cards here in our theoretical deck right now. So we need to cut 2. I think we can probably cut a level 3 Ruby here. As long as we have 1 in our waiting room and we just hold 1 in hand and we just hard play her. As long as we can get to the ideal board of double old Ruby and 1 new Ruby, which should not be that difficult, we should be fine. But the reason why we are more okay with running 3 copies of this Ruby is because we want to start with 2 on the board going into our Climax phase. But we only need 1 of this on the board, and the other one we can just have in our waiting room. So this is going to be a lot easier to get a cumulative 2 copies out compared to the Ruby, which we need to have 2 copies out by the time we exit our main phase. So that's one cut I think that we can definitely do. And I think we can cut a 0. So let's see what 0 we're gonna cut. I'm thinking of either cutting a Brainstorm. It's also possible to cut a level 0 Nora. We do have 4 Wukongs already for our plussing options. So the Nora is kind of just the additional insurance on top. I'm a bit reluctant to cut the James Ironwood just because his double filter is so powerful. And he also is 4 of our only 6 blue cards. And we obviously don't want to level either of these if we can't help it. So we want to level 1 of these. So 4 Pure for sure. 4 James for sure. These cards are always staying in. I think we can try cutting a Nora. And if we find ourselves in a situation where we really want to salvage Brainstorm, hopefully we can have access to the James Ironwood to salvage a Nora, and then we can just Nora Brainstorm. But I kind of envision myself wanting the John Brainstorm on our board more often than not in this deck. So I think like a 2-1 split with 3 cumulative plussing Brainstorms is good enough. So that puts our level 0 count to 20, which is a very comfortable number. Right now it is very trendy to be able to be aggressive at level 0, not only because other decks can be aggressive, but also because we really don't have that much downside to being aggressive at level 0. If we attack more times, we have more chances to trigger standby to bring our 1/1s. A lot of our 0s are very efficient attackers as well. The Wukong can potentially +2 for us. And we also just want to have a lot of 0s because we want to respond to our opponent's tri-lanes. If we don't have enough 0s, then we can't contest all the characters. So that's just giving them a free +1. And I don't really think we're missing too much in terms of our overall strategy and the cards we're bringing out at level 1, 2, and 3. Bring this out at level 0, or hard playing at level 1 if we need to. Climax comboing with the level 2 Crow to bring him out at level 1. And then once we hit level 2, we just start bringing out as many rubies as possible while holding on to whatever text we need for the actual final turn with these level 3s. I kind of do wish we had a bit more spot selectivity. The James Ironwood is not super reliable at getting anything we want from the raid room, especially if they're level 3s. So if there is a situation in which I actually need to grab these and they've been eluding my hand this whole time, I don't actually have a great way to search them out. So I wonder if it's prudent for me to add something like a drop search or a drop salvage. Both of which do exist, so we can definitely run those. The drop salvage is the Zwei from set 1, and the drop search is, there's the Yang from set 1 as well. I'm not sure if there's anything like that in the RWBY Premium set, but I kind of want to just try to check things out and see if I'm missing anything. I don't recall there being one though. Honestly, the Zwei is already a pretty good card by himself, because he also does mill too. And then if we mill a Climax, we can discard a card from a hand to search for anything, which is like really powerful. Yeah, so I kind of dig one copy of Zwei, right? If we do find ourselves in a situation where we need a particular level 3, we can James Ironwood, and if we don't hit a 3 from his top check to just directly salvage a 3, we can salvage a Zwei if he's in our waiting room, because he's a level 0, so we can always grab him, and then we use the Zwei to grab whatever we need from the waiting room instead. And if it happens to be in our deck, then maybe we can mill Climax and search for it in our deck instead. So I do like the concept of this one. Maybe I play like one less Nora here. I think that's a pretty acceptable change, right? The Nora can only grab us level 1 or lower characters, and she's mainly there for the early game, increasing our early game floor, whereas the Zwei will help us a lot with our mid to late game on-demand hand sculpting for any character. This looks pretty good, honestly. I think the last thing I might want to consider is some more defensive options. Or actually, I kind of want to also run a anti-change counter. That's probably going to be pretty useful as well. The anti-change counter is a green counter from set 1. Ren winning advice. Pay 2, sack a character to anti-change. I'm not sure if the refresh counter is better or not. I'm not willing to run both. I think that's kind of a waste of deck slots in this particular deck since we aren't super concerned with winning board. But I do want to run one of them, I think. You know, I guess I'll run the Ren, because this will force my opponent to kind of consider their plays a lot more, maybe deter them from trying to play level 3s at level 2, and try to like heal and push my board. So even the existence of this counter and them knowing that I might have it in my hand might make them play a bit suboptimally, whereas the refresh counter is kind of just for my own personal insurance. I guess this is more of a personal preference thing, but the way I see it, I think I like the sack counter more, so we're gonna play that. And also, okay, so the defensive counter I was talking about is Maidens. This 2/3 event. If I have 5 more remnant characters, I can choose one of their characters and they can't deal damage for the turn, and then I can also give a character 1500 power. Really powerful effect if we can pull it off. What we call like a money counter, the ability to just negate damage on one character completely. The problem is it needs 5 or more characters on our board, which is unreliable. It's very unreliable. I do see this deck losing board eventually, especially starting on level 2 when our opponents start being able to play caustic characters and reversing Arterians. Normally speaking, when we stand by out the 3/2 rubies, we do want to stand by them out in the back row so that we can save them for our next turn to attack with the Climax combos. So these aren't characters that we want to bring out to the front. So I don't really see too many opportunities where this Maiden's counter is going to become super useful outside of exactly the final turn, when we activate our Climax combo and clock shoot them and stuff. But even then, right now, there's a lot of decks out there that run on-play bounce. The most notable one, obviously, is Chainsaw Man, who at the time of this recording is still unrestricted. So with their 3/2 Himeno being able to bounce not only one but two characters on demand, that one card just completely invalidates our strategy here, and it is valuable deck slots that it'll take up over other things. If you had to ask me about like if I would replace a card or any like maybe like even two cards, right? Because this is not necessarily like a one-off. If I play this card, I probably want to play it as like a 2-off. And would I take any two cards out in this current pile to put in two maidens? I would probably say no. So we're just gonna leave that be. And we're gonna just try to be a deck that will just kill them before they kill us, you know? If we Ruby Climax combo, especially with the new firepower that the Ruby Determined card has to supplement our Ruby Rose endgame, if they're not dead, then we're probably dead. So I don't think the Maiden's counter is going to be of much help there, realistically. Just too bricky, too situational, too many counterplays. So, all right. Let's see the final count. Let's double check that we actually have 50 cards here after our cut downs. 4, 7, 10, 12, 15, 16, 20, 22, 26, 30, 36, 40, 42. All right, perfect. This is a 50 card deck. So I'm going to try this out in one of our gameplay matches. That'll be coming up on the channel, and probably play around with it, test it, and if there's any significant changes, I'll let you guys know. And yeah, well, I have high hopes for this deck. This deck does look pretty Quince-like. Maybe the level 2 is a bit less proactive than the Quince variant, but I think the level 3 Ruby Rose top end is extremely strong. And the 8 standby, it's just the standby targets in general are just also just a lot stronger than the old standby targets. Now, I guess as a final aside, to bring up what we were first thinking, is there a world where we play one Pyrrha and like one of her Climax? Like a cheeky 1/1 line. Just to really punish our opponent for not respecting Pyrrha's effect of being able to shuffle 5 cards back into our opponent's deck. Do we do that? Well, we do have the John Brainstorm now, who gives our deck much more accessibility to just grabbing Climaxes in general. And then we can Climax swap into the Pyrrha Climax if we need to. And Pyrrha doesn't actually even need to be in our hand. Just like the level 2 Crow, she can just be in our waiting room, and then we just need to play her Climax and pay the cost, and then she can just do her thing. You know, just for the sake of experimentation, I am kind of tempted to put her in. Kind of like a cheeky 1/1 line. You know, I think I'm willing to test this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add just one copy of both her and her Climax. Now, the first thing we have to determine is which Climax are we cutting from the original 4/4 line. Are we cutting a copy of the 2/2 Crow, or are we cutting a copy of Ruby's Awakening? This is a tough one. I'm not quite sure. I think I would probably cut Ruby's Awakening. Just because if I don't draw the Crow Climax, by the time I get to level 1, my level 1 turn is significantly weaker compared to if I did draw his Climax. Whereas the Ruby's Awakening Climax, I do have the entire rest of the game to find one of 3 copies here. So we're going to cut that. We're going to put one Pyrrha Climax in. And what to cut for the Pyrrha? Now this is a tough one. I'm hesitant to cut my level 0 down further than it is. I might cut a copy of the Tyrian Healer, but at the same time running only one of this healer kind of just feels like I might as well not run any. Maybe this goes in the slot of the counter instead. It's really hard to say. I'm really not sure about this, guys. Let me know what you guys will do in the comments. But I think for now, I will cut a copy of the counter. I'm going to cut a copy of the counter, and we're going to see what happens there. I'm really reluctant to cut any of this level 3 package. Now, it might turn out that I can cut one of these rubies and make it maybe like a 3/3 line instead, or maybe the Tyrians aren't good enough and I can cut those entirely. But for now, without any prior gameplay match experience under my belt with this deck, I'm unwilling to cut any of these other cards. So I'll just go with cutting the counter instead. And you know what? If this doesn't work out, then we can just put the counter back in, you know. So this is a change which does lessen our consistency by quite a bit. But it does improve our win rate against decks that either aren't prepared for Pyrrha's effect or kind of like misplay, or maybe they just don't have a way to prevent the decompression effect of Pyrrha. Alright, so, okay. That's going to be our build. You're going to see this in a gameplay video coming up, and we'll see how that goes, and we'll go with adjusting this deck list from there. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, or any deck building suggestions, what you guys would do. But yeah, I'm excited to test this deck out, and we'll see how it goes. I'll see you guys later in next video. Bye, guys.